It's safe to assume that you are a music producer or a musician who wants to start producing their own music, but things seem a bit complicated. Some terms like sample rate, bit depth, dynamic range, quantization, what does that even mean? And why, when you're using 32-bit floating point, you can go above 0 without clipping? Isn't 0 the maximum? Here's everything you need to know as a music producer, as a musician, explain in the simplest terms possible. Me, speak, vocal cords vibrate, air molecules around my face get irritated and start hitting one another and vibrating at the same speed as my vocal cords. I'm holding a microphone, a very fancy microphone. Inside that microphone, there's a thin membrane, a very thin membrane. When these air molecules hit that membrane, it will vibrate at the same rate. And this number of vibrations per second is called the frequency. Now, this membrane is connected to a copper wire that is coiled or wrapped around a magnet. And if you remember anything from school, this is called electromagnetic induction. You don't need to remember it, but just know that if I move the membrane, this thing will create an electrical signal, and we call that signal analog because it exactly represents the same intensity of vibrations that are happening in real life. So if the membrane is pushed forward, that signal has a positive value. If it's pulled backward, that signal has a negative value. If I take any point on that signal, I can measure a value. What's that value? It's the amplitude or the volume of the signal at that specific point. And we call the signal continuous because it has an infinite amount of points. But that's a problem. Because computers have limited storage, we cannot store an infinite amount of values on a computer. So what are we gonna do about it? We're gonna take some points and ignore some other points. So let's say this is an interval of time. I take one point, I wait for that amount of time, take another point, wait that amount of time, take another point, and so on. Mr. Nyquist said that if we need to represent a frequency on a computer, I need at least 2 points to represent that frequency. So if I have 10 hertz, how many points do I need? 20 points. Human ears can hear anywhere from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz. Now that's very optimistic. Not a lot of people can hear all the way up to 20,000. However, if we want to represent all the frequencies that we can hear on a computer, we have to take how many points? At least 40,000 points. Because Nyquist theorem says that not just exactly twice as many, but at least twice as many. So YouTube, for example, runs at 48,000 points or samples. We call these points a sample. 48,000 samples per second. In other words, the sample rate of YouTube is 48 kilohertz. Now that we picked a finite number of samples, we still have a big problem because each one of these samples can still have an infinite amount of variation in the amplitude or the loudness levels. So what are we gonna do about it? We're gonna decide on a certain number of loudness levels, and each sample from the signal will get snapped to a loudness level that is closest to it. So if we have a point between two loudness levels, we see which loudness level is closer to it, either the upper one or the lower one, and we snap that sample to that loudness level. And that process is called quantization. If a signal gets too quiet below a certain threshold, we cannot quantize it anymore. It will get registered as silence, as if there is no signal at all. So the difference between the lowest quantizable signal, or in other words, the quietest level that we can register, and the highest level that we can register, everything in between, that is called the dynamic range. And the dynamic range is represented by bits. If you ever saw the term bit depth, that's what it means. It means how many levels of loudness this signal has. 1 bit is roughly 6 dBFS. Now, decibels come in different flavors and they are used for different things, but what we are talking about right now, if you're recording audio into a computer, we use the dB full scale. And on a full scale, the maximum loudness level, or the upper ceiling, the thing you cannot go above, is 0 decibels full scale, and you can only go down from there. Now, I said 1 bit is roughly 6 decibels because it's 6.02, but even at the biggest dynamic range, the difference is only gonna be like half a decibel, so it's not really significant. We can just say that 1 bit is 6 dB. There's one more very important thing you need to know, and it's how to count the number of loudness levels. So a bit is the smallest unit a computer can understand. It can either be on or off, 1 or 0. There is not, just two states. So if a signal has a dynamic range of 1 bit, it's gonna be either silence or full volume, no in between. If it's 2 bits, then each bit can have 2 states. What we need to do is 2 to the power of the number of bits. So we have 2 bits, 2 to the power of 2 is 4. A 2-bit signal has 4 loudness levels. 4-bit signal is 2 to the power of 4, 16 loudness levels. An 8-bit signal has 256 loudness levels, and so on. A CD is 16 bits. Streaming platforms like YouTube, Spotify, whatever, run at 24 bits. Your music software or audio recording software can run internally up to a 32-bit floating point, which is huge. It's just like a safety net. You cannot go wrong. It's so big that you cannot reach the upper limit. Now, if you want to learn a concept that is a bit more advanced, something that not many music producers actually understand, but I think is very important, click on this video right here, and I'll see you there.